Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting over episode 25 of Cowboy Bebop. If you'd like to watch along, start watching now. Alright, so here we have the penultimate episode, The Real Folk Blues, Part 1. And in this first scene here, it seems that we're following around Julia on some planet, possibly Mars. Judging by the voicemail, which sounds like it might have been from Spike's protege, that all is not well, and that the elders, those three scrawny men Vicious was tacitly threatening before are onto her. And speaking of the devil, Vicious appears to be in the process of causing trouble. With his hired goons, he would have just absolutely ventilated anybody that was in this room, if indeed there was anyone. It seems like he's been outwitted. So the three Eldars have outsmarted Vicious, and they're really just laying into him, calling him a fool. He has some choice things to say in return about how, they're essentially doddering old corpses who can't do anything on their own. They both raise good points, but it seems to me the elders are making a mistake here by, rather than just killing Vicious, like they probably should, they're just gonna keep him around for a while, imprisoned. Notably, Vicious's pet bird just flew off and nobody really bothered to do anything about it. So meanwhile, Jet and Spike are drowning their sorrows in a bar. Seems like things aren't going so well since everyone else left. All things considered, they're acquitting themselves fairly well, considering there's a whole bunch of people shooting at them with considerably more firepower than they have. So, Jet takes a bullet to the knee, and Lin shows up. Oh, I take that back. He's Lin's brother, Shin. So, maybe Lin is actually dead then. So, Shin came to sort of give Spike a warning about the coup Vicious attempted and how, Spike's head is next on the chopping block. And in doing so, Shin has essentially betrayed the syndicate, probably in a similar fashion to the way Spike did. So the past is really starting to catch up with Spike in full force here. So Jet's sort of having a one sided conversation with Spike about what he's going to do. He's not a member of the syndicate, so none of this stuff should really affect him. But at the same time, whether he wants it to affect him or not, the syndicate's after him regardless. So Spike once again reflects on his past encounters with Julia. So Spike says some really thought provoking stuff to Julia about how she wants to know what they'll do if she runs away with him. And he says, live. It'll be like watching a dream. So it seems to me that even back then, Spike didn't really consider himself to be living. And we're getting a little bit more exposition here. Basically, Vicious kind of informs her that either she can kill Spike or they can both die. And judging how Spike is alive, and presumably so is Julia, that didn't really happen. So while all that's going on elsewhere, Faye's just sort of hanging out by herself. So Faye's sort of watching this scene unfold between a man and his elderly mother. And it sounds like the dialogue between them is sort of evocative of what Fate is feeling. It's just all that talk about belonging and taking care of each other and all that stuff. So Faye doesn't really fully know what's going on when she mouthed off to Spike like that. Although it seems like she's just now been thrown into the middle of a mess because Julia's driving around in a hot rod being chased by what appeared to be syndicate goons. Without a second thought, she just hops in the car and decides to throw her lot in with Julia. And it's very likely she doesn't even realize the significance of this person at this juncture. So Julia and Faye get to chit chatting. They start to learn about each other a little bit. So when she mentions she's looking for a bounty hunter, that's kind of when the coin drops. Faye seems to realize that something is up here. So Julia decides to convey a message to Faye to pass on to Spike. She just sort of says, tell Spike that I'll be waiting for him there, and drives off with no more explanation than that. So Jet's sort of crippled by this point, so he's probably going to be out of action for the rest of the show. So Jet kind of like he he tells an allegory, and honestly, I'm not quite sure what to make of it, except that he's almost trying to dissuade Spike from whatever he's about to do. So Spike kind of opens up a bit more about Julia, and he talks about how he had died once before, but meeting Julia was like the his life that he had formerly lost, I guess. So that scene, it's also an interesting counterpoint between Jet and Spike because in all of the episodes that really focused on him, Jet had accepted and moved beyond his past, whereas Spike isn't really capable of doing that. So one of Spike's old buddies informs him that the Syndicate has it out for Spike. He tells him that he should probably get the heck out of Dodge too while he's at it. But by this point, Spike is unwilling to change his course, and I don't think Jet really is either. So it seems like excrement is hitting the fan again as the Syndicate attacks the Bebop. Faye doesn't really get a chance to. Oh, I take that back. She managed to deliver the message. So when she delivers that message, there's a palpable change in Spike's attitude. Now Spike is deadly serious in a way that he rarely is. So while that battle's going on, the Syndicate and the Eldars are preparing to execute Vicious by what looks like a firing squad. And in a last moment of defiance, he tells them that he doesn't have any last words. He doesn't want to bequeath anything. And at that last moment, the bird shows up and it explodes, I guess, and it reveals the true betrayal. Half of the fighting squad turns on the other half, shoots them all. Vicious manages to free himself. So as Spike is tearing up all these other combatants in the air, all these members of the syndicate are getting torn down in very savage fashion. So with the Bebop and Faye's ship being fairly damaged, but Spike in relatively good condition, Jet gives him his blessing. Don't worry about us. Don't stick around. Just go. As Spike flies off to meet Julia, Vicious declares that he's the one in charge now. His power is the only power. And finally, Spike and Julia meet each other again. And Julia appears to be ready to make good on that bargain Vicious offered her. This is some heavy stuff, man. So, oddly enough, the trailer for the next episode is pretty lighthearted. Of course, we know that the last episode will not be lighthearted, but that's a matter for another time. So, thank you for watching this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means stick around for the next and final episode of Cowboy Bebop, The Real Folk Blues, Part 2.